warm welcome to all the viewers who are tuning into my YouTube station, Smita Sharma, journalist, and the world continues to be tumultuous. We have woken up to the news of Israel striking at Iran, something that was being speculated about, that was expected, and it has now happened just days ahead of that scheduled sixth round of talks on Iran's nuclear program, which is scheduled in Muscat on 15th of June between the United States and Iran. Donald Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, is supposed to be in Muscat for those talks, along with the Iranian foreign minister. But what we have, in fact, woken up today is news that the IDF has actually struck, and the Israeli Defense Forces are now claiming that they have had major success. This is a tweet that they've posted at 10:35 a.m. this morning. Now, these strikes actually happened overnight. Since then, Israel has said that Iran has tried sending in at least 100 drone strikes. At around 10:35 a.m., the Israeli Defense Forces on the social media platform X, they posted to say, "We can now confirm that the Chief of Staff of the Iranian Armed Forces, Commander of the IRGC, and the commander of Iran's emergency command were all eliminated in the Israeli strikes across Iran by more than 200 fighter jets. These are three ruthless mass murderers, is what Israel calls them, with international blood on their hands." So what really happens next? We've already seen in the past 48 hours, the United States evacuate what it called was non-essential personnel from several of its embassies in the region. There were tensions that were boiling in Iraq too. The United States, though, has tried putting out a disclaimer to say that, look, we have no role to play in these round of strikes. And, basically it's all on Israel and on Netanyahu. Now, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu spoke after these operations were launched. Let's listen in to what he had to say.
Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, a targeted military operation to roll back the Iranian threat to Israel's very survival. This operation will continue for as many days as it takes to remove this threat. For decades, the tyrants of Tehran have brazenly, openly called for Israel's destruction. They've backed up their genocidal rhetoric with a program to develop nuclear weapons. In recent years, Iran has produced enough highly enriched uranium for 9 atom bombs. 9. In recent months, Iran has taken steps that it has never taken before, steps to weaponize this enriched uranium.
So there you have those statements coming in from the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And what Israel is saying is that this is a matter of survival, which they've always been saying when it comes to Iran. The IDF says that it carried out strikes on nuclear sites in Iran. And it also claims that the Revolutionary Guard Chief Hossein Salami, the other commanders, have been killed. The Iranian state TV said that residential areas in Tehran were hit and civilians were among those killed, including children. Now, this is something that, of course, the news channels cannot independently verify. Let me add to the conversation now Stanly Johny, who is the international editor for The Hindu and also a prolific writer, somebody who recently authored the book Original Sin, which focuses on the Middle East, the West Asian conflict itself. Stanley, thank you for joining us this morning. First of all, what is it that we know exactly as far as what has played out overnight?
Yeah, thanks, Smita. Thanks for having me. So, like Netanyahu himself said in the footage you showed, the Israelis had carried out multiple waves of attacks. So we don't know the amount of casualties. We don't know the amount of damage Israel has inflicted on Iran. But what we know is that Natanz nuclear facility has been attacked. And Israel has targeted Iran's nuclear facilities and ballistic missile factories and even laboratories and the houses of Iranian commanders as well as the nuclear scientists. So apparently the attack, according to Israeli media, local media, the attack lasted 4 hours. It started at 3 a.m. in the morning, and then it went on 4 hours. And multiple some 200 Israeli aircraft joined the attack. So there were waves of attack. And Natanz facility, the IAEA confirmed that Natanz facility was hit. So Natanz is perhaps the most important Iranian nuclear enrichment facility. And it is also an underground facility. The Israeli officials say that Natanz was attacked multiple times. So Israel has this heavy bombs. So one assumed that because otherwise it is not easy to destroy a facility like Natanz. So Israel has carried out multiple attacks on Natanz. But the interesting takeaway from the statements of the Israeli leaders is that this is not a one-off attack, because you can't. If Israel's plan is to destroy or roll back Iran's nuclear facilities, Israel is not going to achieve that in a single strike. So this is only the beginning of a prolonged conflict, unless the United States steps in and dials down the tensions. I don't know, because what is immediately going to happen is an Iranian retaliation. So unlike in October or April 2014, when Iran took its time, gave the warnings, and launched the attack, this time within a few hours, the Iranians have launched some 100 drones towards the Israelis. And drones are basically, they will first fire the drones, and then Israel will shoot them down, and then the ballistic missiles will come. And it is likely that Iran will launch hundreds of ballistic missiles in the next few hours. So what you are going to witness is, Israeli attacks and the Iranian retaliation. So this is, I think, going to be cyclical. And the Israelis say, Israel's military chief said that I can't offer you a complete success because there are likely to have civilian casualties. But what I can assure you is that at the end of this operation, we will meet our objective. So what Israel wants to achieve is to substantially roll back Iranian nuclear capabilities. And the Israelis believe that they can meet that objective through a series of strikes in the coming days.
But, keeping in mind what the IDF says here, that, and not just the IDF, what they have been saying, that we will continue with this. This is what actually, in fact, Netanyahu wrote, saying that, this will continue for the days to come. It's not going to basically end here. This operation will continue for as many days as it takes to remove this threat. The big question here really, Stanley, is, and which in fact one of our viewers is also asking, will Iran retaliate? I mean, it's already, we have seen the drone strikes. Now, what form will this retaliation take? Are we looking at a full-blown war now in the Middle East?
I think this is an open war now between the Iranians and the Israelis. So will Iran retaliate? Yes, it has already started retaliating. So Iran has launched the drones. Iran will definitely launch the ballistic missiles. And this time, even in October, when Iran launched the ballistic missile attack, they launched some 300 ballistic missiles, and then it had actually hit Israeli military facilities. So Iran can hit Israeli population targets if Iran wants to do that, and Iran can overwhelm Israeli military defenses. But at the same time, Israel hopes, or Israel knows, that the Americans and the French and the British, they all will come to Israel's defense, at least in setting up some kind of a missile defense shield, which is what they did in April 2024. So Iran will retaliate, but Israel and its allies will try to neutralize the Iranian attack. And, if you look at the map, Iran is quite far away. Iran's ability to strike back Israel, despite its possession of the ballistic missiles, is limited compared to the Israeli ability to strike back. Because I think what Israelis did in October 2024 was to take out Iranian missile defense. And there are reports in Times of Israel that Mossad was carrying out undercover operations inside Iran in recent days, basically neutralizing Iranian missile defense. So this explains why or how Israeli warplanes were able to operate freely in Iranian skies for hours, which is basically a major setback for the Iranians, because they have S-300 missile defense system. They don't have S-400. They don't have the most advanced missile defense system, but they have the Soviet-supplied S-300 missile defense system. So the Israelis apparently took down most of the Iranian missile defense in October 2024, which also gives confidence to Israel to operate freely in Iranian skies. And Israel has the most advanced aircraft fighter jets supplied by the Americans. So, so the capability, if you look at the capability of Iranian capability to strike back, it is limited compared to the Israeli capability. Secondly, Iran's missile defense system, Iran's defense capabilities are limited, whereas Israel has enormous defense capabilities because it is supported by the West. Because the United States has already moved to the THAAD. They had deployed Patriot earlier. Israel has Arrow. Israel also has Iron Dome system, and Biden administration had moved to the THAAD. THAAD is one of the most advanced American missile defense systems. So Israel is kind of protected, shielded by its allies. And Israel knows that irrespective of the public posturing of President Donald Trump asking Israel not to attack, etc., this kind of an attack Israel would not have carried out without clearance from the Pentagon. So, which means
absolutely. I mean, for Marco Rubio to put a tweet out there and the U.S. administration to try and say that, oh, Netanyahu has, this is all on Netanyahu, we have no role to play. That is a ridiculous statement to come forward at this point in time, Stanley.
Exactly, because what the Americans are trying to do is to tell the Iranians that we are not at least directly involved in the combat operation, which could be true. I mean, American fighter jets are not flying along with the Israeli jets to attack the Iranians, but there could be intelligence sharing. And I think the most important point is that there will be clearance from the Pentagon and the White House, without which the Israelis would not carry out this attack. I mean, that is common sense. And then, why the Americans are saying that they are not directly involved? Because they don't want Iran to start attacking American military bases in the region. And the Saudis have also come out with a pretty strong statement, because the Saudis do not want Iran to attack the American base in Saudi Arabia. The Emiratis do not want. So basically, the United States, does, at least at this point of time, doesn't want the war to spill over across the Gulf. Then it would be disastrous. Because and the Americans do not want Iran to shut down the Strait of Hormuz or the Gulf of Oman or to attack ships in the Arabian Sea. So that would be economically, that would be catastrophic. So that's why the United States is now sending out the message that we are not directly involved in the war. This is between you and the Israelis, but the Americans will provide defensive support to Israel if Iran carries out the attack. I think this is all part of a strategy.
Right. Let's also, in fact, look at what the Iranian Foreign Minister Sayed Arakchi had to say. This is actually a day before, when obviously there was no clear sign that Israel would strike. Israel had indicated it was ready to strike, but Arakchi had said that President Trump entered office saying that Iran should not have nuclear weapons, and that is actually in line with their own doctrine. And yesterday I was speaking to Ambassador Rakesh Sood, who was making this point. That look, Iran has time and again said that, it's not even permitted within their religion itself, that, they would rather have the uranium enrichment capacity, but they're not doing it for making bombs. Despite that, if Israelis do not want these talks to proceed, what was at stake for Netanyahu to have gone in for this strike and to have not allowed you think the talks will still go on in Muscat?
I don't know what the Iranians are going to do. It doesn't make any sense for the Iranians to continue to talk to the Americans after what happened, after the Israeli attack. Definitely the Israelis do not want a deal between the Americans and the Iranians. They did not accept the 2015 agreement. I remember talking to Israeli diplomats who told us that no deal is better than a bad deal. A senior Israeli diplomat once told us. So, because, the problem is that the Obama administration had looked at Iran and he wanted to basically dismantle the Iranian nuclear program or curtail the Iranian nuclear program. And in return for allowing Iran to join the diplomatic and political mainstream of West Asia. But when Israel looks at the same scenario, Israel feels threatened, because Israel's problem is not only Iranian nuclear program, but also Iran's conventional military and economic capabilities. Iran is a big country with enormous natural resources. I mean, it is one of the major powers in West Asia, and it is not allowed to grow because Iran has been basically under sanctions, international sanctions. So if you allow Iran to join the economic mainstream, if you lift the sanctions, which means Iran will be enormously powerful, and that is an unacceptable outcome for Israel. So this is the problem. When Israel looks at any potential future agreement, so Israel is not willing to accept the sanctions being lifted or allowing Iran to join the economic mainstream. That is one thing. And the Iranians on the other side say that in 2015, Iran agreed to roll back their nuclear program, but they wanted to retain their, the capabilities to enrich uranium. So that they wanted to enrich uranium to a lower level purity, 3%, etc., etc. So they don't want to give that up.
Even if the enrichment capacity right now, between the time that the negotiations were done for the joint comprehensive partnership of action between US, the other partners, Europe and JCPOA to now, even if the enrichment capacity is now at 60%, it's not like Iran is going to produce a bomb just within this week itself or next. It still has some way to go.
Yeah. So technically speaking, from 60%, which is the high enrichment uranium, to 90%, which is the weapons grade uranium, it takes only a few days. So, I mean, if Iran wants to do that, Iran can actually do that. But the question is whether Iran has taken that decision. And there is nothing suggests, there is no intelligence, nothing that suggests that Iran has taken the decision to make the bomb. And even if Iran makes the bomb, so the Israelis say, Israeli Prime Minister says that, and Israel, by the way, is a nuclear weapons state. Nobody is talking about it, but IAEA never inspects the Israeli facilities because Israel is protected by the Americans, and Israel is the only nuclear weapon state in West Asia. So now Netanyahu says Iran has enough highly enriched uranium to make up to 10 to 15 bombs. So IAEA also says that Iran has actually violated its own obligations as part of a nuclear non-proliferation treaty member. But the question is here is that whether Iran is making the bomb. I don't think so. Because there is no evidence to suggest that Iran has taken that decision to make the bomb. But the Israelis actually feel that since they have basically gathered enough highly enriched uranium, 60% enriched uranium, it's only a matter of time if Iran decides to turn them into weapons grade uranium, then they can make the bomb. But even if they make the bomb, they don't have the delivery mechanism. I mean, you make the bomb and then you should have the delivery system to fit the bomb into a ballistic missile and then fire it. That is still far, far away. I mean, it will take months, even if Iran takes that decision. But what Israel is trying to do is that Israel doesn't want this nuclear program to go on any further. And Israel also doesn't want any kind of accommodation, diplomatic accommodation between the United States and the Iranians. So they think that they can basically torpedo everything with this strike. They hope that they can roll back the nuclear program. They can torpedo any kind of reconciliation between the Americans and the Iranians.
I mean, it's a tad rich for Netanyahu to be standing up there. And I am absolutely no fan of the Iranian dictatorship, which has time and again cracked down on its citizens, which has led to repression when it comes to freedom of expression, when it comes to people's rights. But for Netanyahu to be standing up there and calling them, of course, genocidal and mass murderers with what is going on in Gaza on a day when we have also seen the UN vote yet again on the situation in Gaza, and it's an overwhelming vote as far as the world is concerned. The General Assembly has adopted a resolution that demands an immediate, unconditional, and permanent ceasefire in the war in Gaza. So there are 149 who have voted in favor, 12 are against, and the ones who have abstained, they include, in fact, 19 countries, which include India. India is in the bracket with Ecuador, Romania, etc. The US, of course, stands firmly with Israel as it votes a no. So for Netanyahu, really at this stage in time, with the kind of criticism that has increased so sharply on the world stage for him, what is happening within the Israeli parliament, the Knesset, which was also going to vote, there are important votes happening, the kind of opposition to him. And for him, there has to be one war or the other war that has to go on right now for his own survival.
Exactly. Because there is clearly a pattern. Netanyahu agreed to the ceasefire in January, and then before the budget vote came up, because immediately after he agreed to the ceasefire, under pressure from the Americans, and one of his far-right allies had quit the government. And before the next budget vote came, he violated the ceasefire. He started attacking Gaza again so that he could save the government. And now internally, if you look at Israel's politics, there is basically the religious parties have turned against Netanyahu because the religious parties do not want the Haredi Jews to be drafted as part of the conscription law. So they want the government to pass legislation to continue to exempt the Haredis from conscription. So there are internal, Netanyahu has survived for now, but still there are internal challenges. And the hostage situation is another thing. There are continued protests in Israel demanding hostages, not demanding the war in Gaza to be shut down, but at least the hostages to be released. And you see the international pressure, at least in Europe, is also mounting up on Netanyahu, because two of Netanyahu's top ministers, Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, were sanctioned by the UK, Canada, Norway, New Zealand, and Australia. All are Israel's allies. And Sweden yesterday said that Israel is committing a war crime. Ehud Olmert, a former Israeli prime minister, had said that we are committing war crime in Gaza. So there is actually the situation, even in the West, the criticism is mounting. And now Netanyahu can tell the world that we are actually saving the world from the Iranian mullahs who are going to acquire nuclear weapons. I mean, it sounds ridiculous if you do a fact-based analysis, because you killed 54,000 people in Gaza and you are facing no international opprobrium. Okay, condemnations are coming, now criticisms are coming, but Israel still has a free hand to continue its war in Gaza, and Israel has a free hand to go around the region and carry out military attacks wherever it wants to do. I mean,
Yes,
this is
it's
the reality of West Asia.
hand that it has been gifted, it seems.
Yeah. And so here, I mean, one thing we have to discuss clearly is the complete failure of the Trump administration, because Trump came to power promising to shut down the war. So we are witnessing the limits of American diplomacy. We witnessed the limits of American power earlier, because, you look at the Ukraine-Russia war. Trump now says that we would let both of them to continue to fight for some more time, which means he himself has given up. And you look at the war in Gaza. I mean, Witkoff has been meeting all sides for quite some time, but you still don't have a proper ceasefire in Gaza. And with Iran, Trump himself had said that he told Netanyahu during their last call that an attack on Iran was off limits for the Israelis. New York Times had reported this. And then Trump started the negotiations, and the negotiations are still going on. And they are supposed to meet, as you pointed out, on Sunday in Muscat for the 6th round of talks between the Iranians and the Americans. Apparently, Witkoff has submitted a proposal to the Iranians, which would allow Iran to continue to enrich uranium to the lower purity for an interim period, and then an international consortium can take over, which would continue to provide nuclear fuel to Iran. This is the Witkoff proposal. And the Iranians have given their own proposal back to the Americans. So you have a flurry of diplomatic action going on. But then Donald Trump is not able to rein in the Israelis. I mean, this is surprising to me.
He's honestly neither been able to do anything, move the needle when it comes to the Russia-Ukraine war, despite his tall rhetorical claims during the election campaign, nor has he managed to move forward when it comes to any sign of peace or normalcy or any reconciliation in Gaza with the Palestinians. All he is doing right now is actually trying to arm, twist, and bully Indians into getting convinced that he is the one who got the ceasefire done, used trade as a carrot. And, he's just said that, no, I'm going to make India, Pakistan sit down and make them talk on Kashmir. So now he's found this new spot where he thinks he can actually arm twist. So, but Stanley, the question here also is that, having said, of course, the fact that Netanyahu is so brazen, but against Hamas, while the war still goes on, and I mean, Hamas is not going to die down just because you've killed their commanders. At the end of the day, it happens with everything that has to do with ideological wars. He has actually neutralized a lot of senior commanders of the Hamas, the Israeli forces have. And today, to have actually managed to kill the IRGC chief, Hosseini, which Khamenei in his tweet also seems to now suggest. How strong really are the Iranians in a position right now in terms of retaliation? What is their capacity like? Look, we have the Iranian spiritual leader's tweet here. He says the Indian enemies attacked, several commanders and scientists have been martyred. So he's not named them, but he is accepting that people have been killed. What is the Iranian capacity like right now, realistically sifting, of course, what is posted on social media from their top spiritual leader too?
I think Iran has the capacity to strike back Israel, but I would also say that Iran is pretty weak at this point of time. See, I was actually swifting through news reports in the morning. So why did Israel carry out the attack now? This is a fundamental question. So interestingly, after October 7, what Israel did was not to fight Hamas, right? Israel took the war to the Palestinians in Gaza. That is one thing. And Israel took the war to Iran in the region. So it was a two-front war. So it went after Hamas. Of course, it went after Hezbollah. And it actually carried out multiple attacks against the Syrian regime, which eventually led to the offensive by the HTS and the collapse of Bashar al-Assad. And the collapse of Bashar al-Assad basically altered the balance of power in the region. So, which means Iran, from 1982 onwards, the axis was Iran's main deterrence capability, the axis of resistance. And Bashar or the Assad regime in Syria, Hezbollah, and Hamas, all these actors are part of the axis. So the axis has been substantially weakened by the Israeli attacks, right? And then the fall of Bashar al-Assad clearly altered the balance of power. And then in October 2024, Israel took down the Iranian defense capabilities as well, which means the Israelis have been arguing that they find a historic opportunity to attack Iran. I wrote this in April 2025 in the Hindu, saying that the Israelis would not let this opportunity go. So they found a historic opportunity because the axis is weakened, the missile defense system has been taken out, the Russians are occupied with Ukrainians, and the Chinese are unlikely to make any military intervention, and you have Donald Trump in the White House. So when the Israelis look at the scene, they think that their stars are being aligned, right? They can make the move now. So they made the move now. And what the Iranians can do what they can do is to launch ballistic missile attacks. And they have the ballistic missile capabilities, and they have thousands of ballistic missiles. So which they will continue to launch, I think. But the Israelis believe that the Americans and the French and the British and even the Jordanians will come to their defense. And if the war goes out of hand, out of control, the Americans could join the attack. Because as Nixon said in the 1970s, no American president would let Israel go down the tube.
Let's also, in fact, bring up the Indian government's reaction. The Ministry of External Affairs has put out a statement, and it says that we are deeply concerned at the recent developments between Iran and Israel. We are closely monitoring the evolving situation, including reports related to attacks on nuclear sites. India urges both sides to avoid any escalatory steps. Existing channels of dialogue and diplomacy should be utilized to work towards a de-escalation of the situation. Now, this is a sentence which sounds very similar to all the statements that were put out, in post Operation Sindoor and the situation that played out. And in the statement, it also reads that resolve underlying issues. India enjoys close and friendly relations with both the countries and stands ready to extend all possible support. Our missions in both countries are in contact with the Indian community. All Indian nationals in the region are advised to exercise caution, stay safe, and follow local security advisories. Stanley, take our viewers through what is at stake here for India in this entire escalation.
This is the standard Indian position, but India would not like to see the crisis being spilled over into the Gulf, because that is a nightmare scenario for the Indians. This is our concern from the very beginning. Imagine if the Americans start attacking Iran from their bases in the Gulf, and Iran attacking Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, and then which means what? 8 million Indians are stranded. We know how difficult it is to bring back a few thousands of Indians from Yemen or from Kuwait in the early 1990s. So we are talking about 8 million Indians working in the Gulf. And we are also, and if Iran tomorrow shuts down the Strait of Hormuz, Iran has the capacity to shut down the Strait of Hormuz. So Strait of Hormuz connects the Gulf through the Gulf of Oman to the Arabian Sea. Roughly 30% of global oil trade, passages through the Strait of Hormuz. So which means if Iran attacks and shuts down Strait of Hormuz, oil prices will rocket further. And which also means the Americans will start attacking the Iranian navy in the Persian Gulf and the Arabian Sea. So, I mean, if we are talking about that level of escalation, it's going to hurt everybody, not just the Iranians or the Israelis, including the Indians, the Gulf Emirates, the Americans, everyone. So India doesn't want that kind of an escalation. So India has deep stake in the region. That's why India has issued its deep concern. But more than that, I think India's options are limited. We are not directly involved in talks. And I'm also a bit disappointed that India is still not able to take a consistent, strong position with regard to Gaza, because sometimes we withdraw, sometimes we vote against the war, sometimes we abstain. I don't understand, because if you look at the pattern in the last 5-6 votes, India actually voted in favor of the resolutions at the UN General Assembly that asked for a ceasefire. India supported the call for a ceasefire. And now when the whole world is turning against Israel, India is not supporting the call for a ceasefire. So, I mean, even in Indian position, there is a bit of, inconsistency is there. It is unfortunate. But overall, Indian position, India's interests are in line with de-escalation in the region.
Right. And I'm just looking at, in fact, some of the reports coming in from the region. BBC's Tom Bennett is reporting from Jerusalem, and I'm reading out an extract from his report. Here in Jerusalem, supermarket shelves are fast depleting with people stocking up on food and water. Most of the country was woken up at around 3 o'clock this morning with a short burst of sirens and a phone alert warning of a significant threat, with people instructed to stay close to a shelter. Israel's emergency services say they are mobilizing blood services across the country, while some hospitals say they're discharging patients who are well enough to go home. So, as we mentioned, that these strikes really happened from the Israeli side. It happened overnight, and then there was an Iranian retaliation that did happen. The Israeli military bombing 100 Iranian drones on their way to Israel. Do we know of any significant damages to Israel so far, as far as the
I
Iranian
think
retaliation is concerned?
I think the drones have started reaching the Israeli airspace now, just now, when we talk. And I just got an alert saying that the Israeli troops have started shooting down the drones. So the drones usually take a few hours. The Iranians may have launched it in the morning immediately after. I'm sure that the Iranians were ready for this. I mean, they knew an attack was coming. But I think everybody thought the attack would come next week because tomorrow you have the talks with the Americans
Yeah,
on
I
Sunday.
mean, we were joking yesterday about
Yeah,
scheduling our conversation
ex-
because we
exactly,
thought that maybe
exactly.
this would happen. At least there would be that
Yeah,
semblance of a decency to allow that talk to happen.
talk
So
to happen exactly. Yeah, yeah. I mean,
if
I
the
was
talk,
also pretty sure that Israel will attack Iran
hmm.
because Israel would not let this opportunity go. But I thought it will come. It will come after Sunday's talk. But I think Israel actually made use of that. The whole world, including the Iranians, thought it would happen next week. So I think the timing is important. Israel carried out the attack at a time when nobody expected it to happen. They let the Americans know in advance. Marco Rubio confirmed it, that they were aware, the Israelis told them, and then they carried out the attack. The drones have reached Israeli airspace, and I think ballistic missiles will come next.
Just one final question, really, as far as Netanyahu and his the own hold over the country at this point in time is concerned, Stanley, uh, this man, you think, right now, what he's doing today with Iran again will garner popular support for him within the country?
I don't know. I mean, Netanyahu is a very polarizing figure. He has diehard supporters. He also has very strong critics in Israel. But Israel is a divided society, right? Even if Netanyahu becomes popular, he has his approval rates go up. Likud is not going to gain a majority. And immediately after October 7, Netanyahu's approval rating had also, collapsed in Israel. So what Netanyahu is trying to do is he doesn't want his government to collapse and Israel to go into polls. That's when Netanyahu will face the real test. So Netanyahu is determined to prevent that from happening. So he is trying his best to keep together his right, religious, far right alliance, which includes religious parties, far right parties, and his own Likud party, so that he doesn't have to go to election. So yeah, we don't know what kind of an impact this is going to have on Israel's domestic politics, but definitely I can say one thing, that Netanyahu, from October 7, Netanyahu is facing a lot of internal political challenges in Israel. First of all, October 7 happened on his watch. He failed to prevent it. And he promised victory in Gaza. And it's been how many months? It's been 19 months. And the war in Gaza is still going on. He has destroyed the whole of Gaza, killed 54,000 people, the Israeli troops. They still haven't defeated Hamas. They still haven't got the hostages released, right? And the Houthis still continue to attack Israel. The Americans attacked Houthis. The Saudis attacked Houthis earlier. The Israelis themselves attacked Houthis, and the Houthis still launched ballistic missile towards Israel. And now he is attacking Iran. My question is that where is peace? Israel is a country that is condemned to live in war. It doesn't
Right.
taste peace at all. And Netanyahu is making it all the more difficult.
Just one last question from the audience. Mijit Ramaswamy is asking Stanley, don't you think these strikes won't have any significant impact on Iran's nuclear program? Rather, it would lead Iran to accelerate the enrichment program to weapon grade.
So that is the question. I think the Israelis, what they want to do is to destroy the nuclear programs completely in a series of strikes. So the Israelis, since they have started this, they are unlikely to be reined in. The Americans also know this. So, but if Iran survives, they have all the incentive to make a bomb, to accelerate their nuclear activities, because the Iranians until now, even though they enriched uranium to 60%, the Iranians said that they didn't want to make the bomb. Khamenei had issued a fatwa. They said the bomb was un-Islamic. They gave all kind of reasoning to tell the world, to convince the world that they were not after the bomb. But that didn't stop the Israelis from attacking them, right? And the Americans haven't carried out an attack on North Korea because the Americans know that North Korea has the bomb. So if you look at it from a realistic point of view, if Iran survives, or this regime, this particular Iranian regime survives the current round of Israeli attack, I think they will find it more lucrative to make a bomb to ensure their own safety in the future.
Absolutely. And, I would recommend our viewers to actually look up that video of our conversation with Ambassador Rakesh Sood, where we're also discussing that at the end of the day, there are examples, whether it's Iraq, whether it's Libya, for people to reason as to why they shouldn't give up on their nuclear program, and they cannot really trust the Americans. Even at this point in time, when Donald Trump says that, look, I had prior information of the strikes, but I have no role to play, it does sound a very bizarre statement, given the US stakes and the US leverage in the region. But clearly, Netanyahu is not even listening to Trump or the United States at this point in time. It's a developing story, and we will continue to track, as Stanley mentioned, that the drones that have been in fact sent from Iran, the drone strike from Iran, those drones have just about started reaching the Israeli skies. We'll have to see how that plays out. But thank you so much. Appreciate Stanly Johny for finding time to speaking to us on a really, really busy day.
Thank you, Smita.
Right. And to all our viewers, of course, you can continue to read Stanley's fabulous and scholarly writings in the Hindu and look up his book as well, The Original Sin. Thanks for tuning in and for asking your questions as well. We'll keep returning with more developments and more updates. And do ensure that you press that bell icon notification when you subscribe to the channel so that you get an alert every time we go live. Thanks for watching. Take care. Goodbye.